Each question you answer is another breath you take, the voice from behind him spoke. It was the voice of death, emotionless and empty. Hearing it made Wyatt's stomach lurch as if he were looking over the edge of a high cliff. Not seeing his face, knowing that he held the blade that would kill him, made it feel like an execution. He thought of Allie, hoped she would be all right, then realized she would see him. The thought struck with surprising clarity. She would rush out after it was over and find him on the street. She would wade through his blood. "What happened?" the executioner asked again, his voice instantly erasing all other thoughts. "I sold my ship." "Why?" "It doesn't matter." "Gambling debts?" "No." "Why, then?" "What difference does it make? You're going to kill me anyway. Just do it." He had steadied himself. He was ready. He clenched his teeth, shut his eyes. Still, the killer delayed. "It makes a difference," the executioner whispered in his ear, "because Allie is not your daughter." The blade came away from Wyatt's neck. Slowly, hesitantly, Wyatt turned to face the man holding the dagger. He had never seen him before. He was smaller than his partner, dressed in a black coat with a hood that shaded his features, revealing only hints of a face. The tip of a sharp nose, highlight of a cheek, end of a chin. "How do you know that?" "She saw us in the dark. She saw my knife at your throat as we stood in deep shadows across the length of 20 yards. Wyatt said nothing. He did not dare move or speak. He did not know what to think. Somehow, something had changed. The certainty of death rolled back a step, but its shadow lingered. He had no idea what was happening and was terrified of making a misstep. "You sold your ship to buy her, didn't you?" the hooded man guessed. "But from whom, and why?" Wyatt stared at the face beneath the hood, a bleak landscape, a desert dry of compassion. Death was there, a mere breath away. An utterance remained all that separated eternity from salvation. The bigger man, the one with 3 swords, reached out and placed a hand on his shoulder. "A lot is riding on your answer. But you already knew that, didn't you? Right now you're trying to decide what to say. And of course, you're trying to guess what we want to hear. Don't. Go with the truth. At least that way, if you're wrong, your death won't have been because of a lie." Wyatt nodded. He closed his eyes again, took a deep breath, and said, "I bought her from a man named Ambrose." "Ambrose Moore?" the executioner asked. "Yes." Wyatt waited, but nothing happened. He opened his eyes. The dagger was gone and the 3-sword man was smiling at him. "I don't know how much that little girl cost, but it was the best money you ever spent." "You aren't going to kill me?" "Not today. You still owe us 100 tenets for the balance on that job," the man in the hood told him coldly. This passage comes from the beginning of the second book and does a great job of setting up the tone and characters. Specifically, this passage sets up Royce very well for his journey and development. First, I need to give some context to help illustrate why this is such an important moment. Within this world, there are 3 main races: humans, dwarves, and most importantly in this case, elves. Elves in this world were the enemy of man for a very long time, and when the story takes place, they have been forced into their own corner of the world. They are so unseen that many people believe that there are no pure-blooded elves left. There are, however, those who are a mix of both human and elf. These people are heavily discriminated against by most. One of the most important things we learn in this book is that Royce has elvish blood, but most of his human genes took over appearance-wise, so he looks human while retaining elven traits. Elves in this world are light on their feet, quick, and can see in the dark. It's also implied that they might be shorter, as all the characters who have elvish blood are described to be. The seeing in the dark was a very notable trait for Royce, and is how he determines that Allie is part elf when he says, "She saw us in the dark. She saw my knife at your throat as we stood deep in shadow across the length of 20 yards. Now, they are there to kill Wyatt because he hired them to steal a sword, which led to them getting framed for killing the king. Royce is generally someone who would not give a second thought to killing someone who has wronged him. However, this moment shows a deeper side of him in letting Wyatt go. Normally, Hadrian is the type of person to lead with good morality, but Royce is connecting with someone like him and respecting the man who sacrificed so much for her. Despite us not fully learning about Royce's truth until much later, this was a phenomenal bit of foreshadowing and justification, and once again a great way of setting up the pillars of the story. I chose this moment because it stuck out a lot to me. While Royce is a main character, it feels like he was sidelined a bit for the first part, and that he didn't have much character progression. This book contrasts that by immediately showing us a different side of him. This moment also helps further establish the world building behind the elves and how people view them. It's a pretty obvious parallel to the discrimination in the real world, and helps to blur the line of the magic circle. Tying in real world parallels helps give the book a more grounded reality. One interesting thing to note is that despite Royce understanding that the discrimination of not being fully human, he himself dislikes dwarves. Now, that is a common trope within fantasy, and to his credit, he did have a couple of bad experiences with them, but it's still interesting to see the contrast between his compassion and his hate, which is another thing this passage helps illustrate. Overall, I find this to be one of the best moments in the whole book, as it sets up so much, and in hindsight it makes so much sense. It's the beginning of Royce's character arc. It helps build the world, and is so intriguing to read despite not that much actually happening. The tension we get as the reader, seeing our protagonist from the perspective of someone else, is terrifying. There is so much tension and it all pays off so well. All of this combines to make a phenomenal passage to read.